With this Civic Tourer, Honda has for the first time designed a car in Europe as well as building it there. The result is an unexpectedly effective combination of style and practicality matched to driving dynamics a cut above those of most competing small estates and crossovers, especially when matched to peppy but frugal 1.6 litre diesel power. It's a surprising package for the right kind of buyer. On the face of things, the idea of a small estate car doesn't make much sense. You might reasonably think that trying to sell a small wagon is a bit like promoting the world's tallest midget or mixing the least alcoholic tequila. A bit pointless on the face of it. Honda don't agree, bringing us this car, their Civic Tourer. This innovative Japanese brand will proudly tell you that it's the smallest model of its kind in the Focus-sized family hatch-based C segment, yet it offers more carrying capacity inside than almost all of its rivals. In fact, we're talking more than you'll get from a Mondeo or Insignia-sized medium-range estate from the next class up. You'd think that kind of rabbit-out-of-the-hat cleverness might give this car a fighting chance in a market currently obsessed with less conventional crossover and small SUV models. And you might be right. With its Civic, Honda has always championed this same combination of sleek, compact styling and practicality. Despite that, there's only ever been one Civic estate model, the Aerodeck, unveiled in 1998 but missing from the range since 2001, when the company felt the market was turning towards trendier means of family transport, like their own CRV 4x4. As it turned out, they weren't entirely correct in that supposition. In the last decade or so, compact estates have continued to maintain a small but profitable market niche, provided they could prove themselves to be both practical and stylish, which meant the brand was missing a trick, given that their Civic's modern era design philosophy, with a unique centre fuel tank layout freeing up interior space other rivals simply couldn't offer, made it a perfect starting point for such a car. Nevertheless, it took until early 2014 for this Civic Tourer to arrive and return its maker to a small estate segment showing gradual but significant signs of growth. Still, at least it offers something distinctly different in its sector, both in terms of style and practicality. But is it different enough for buyers to overlook the competing charms of other compact station wagons and Qashqai class crossovers? Let's find out. Let's face it, you'll need to have a long memory if you can recall a Honda Civic that wasn't good to drive. If I was going to put a date on the time when Civic stepped from being something a bit pedestrian to something that was a guarantee of a decent steer, it'd probably be the 7th generation car that debuted in 2000, championing a clever multi-link rear suspension system that most of its rivals subsequently copied. That was dumped for both the 8th generation version and this 9th generation design because it impinged on cabin space, but thanks to some clever trickery elsewhere on the suspension front, Honda's little hatch continued to be able to entertain. Which is an important attribute for this Tourer estate to be able to maintain. Qashqai-like crossovers get impressively close to family hatch-style driving dynamics these days, but there still aren't many you'd really finger as being especially fun to drive, in the way this Civic can be. It certainly helps in this regard that as soon as you set off down the road, you feel at one with the thing. In fact, there isn't another car in this class that I feel as comfortable in as quickly. Okay, so the start button is rather unnecessary, but it does kind of fit in with the whole high-tech feel, and everything else is so driver-centric. The perfectly positioned seat and pedals, the way the gear lever falls beautifully to hand, the way the futuristic dash delivers everything you need to know in perfect line of sight. As the miles roll by, you'll also be struck by the near-perfect weighting and smoothness of of the brake and clutch pedals and the lovely snickety precision of the 6-speed gearbox. In short, you don't need an expensively powerful engine to feel fast in this car. You won't get one either. This Honda was launched with only 2 engine choices, and neither is neck-snappingly rapid. The least expensive alternative is the 142 PS iVTEC 1.8 litre petrol unit, which offers reasonable performance on paper, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 9.2 seconds en route to 130 miles an hour, but only if you rev the thing harder than most owners will want to. Now, the necessity for this is down to the fairly feeble amount of pulling power on offer, just 174 newton meters, and you have to storm up to 6,500 revs to get that. Plus, it'd be even worse if you saddled the thing with the extra cost 5-speed automatic gearbox. My advice then would be to bypass this engine option in favour of the 120 PS 1.6 litre iDTEC diesel power plant that I'm using here. In the past, Honda has sold cars with diesel engines about as willingly and satisfyingly as McDonald's will sell you a salad, but this one's different. True, it's no ball of fire. 62 miles an hour takes 10.1 seconds on the way to 120 miles an hour. But more importantly, there's nearly twice as much pulling power as the alternative 1.8 litre iVTEC petrol variant can offer, 300 newton meters, which makes the car feel a lot more willing than those figures might suggest, as well as facilitating a 1,400 kilogram brake towing weight. As with the petrol Civic, the engine in this one sits crossways under the bonnet and drives the front wheels through a standard 6-speed manual gearbox. Unlike the petrol unit, though, it's a power plant that seems to have been properly tuned to suit the character of the car, feeling happiest when simply surfing along at modest speeds, leaving plenty in reserve. There's little of the harshness and vibration you often get from other small diesels when pulling away, even if you're in a gear that's a little higher than perhaps you ought to be. Nor is there any need to bother pushing it much past 3,500 revs, because it's done its best work by then. Instead, plug into the next gear and take a moment to appreciate the noise reduction work that Honda has put into all Civic models in recent times. There's extra insulation in the rear wheel arches, roof and engine bay, better door seals all round, and thicker front-side windows. The result is refinement markedly better than original versions of this 8th generation Civic could provide, with unpleasant frequencies of engine, tyre and wind noise filtered out far more effectively. You don't even get the boominess from the low bay at speed that most other small estates exhibit. This car is, in short, a very careful feat of engineering. Another example of that is found in this car's clever ADS adaptive damper system, notable in this case for the fact that, with cost saving in mind, it's the first setup of its kind to only influence the rear of the car. The idea, apparently, is to make this Civic Tourer a better load carrier when you're carting stuff around and a more responsive driver's car when you're not. It's fitted as standard to plusher versions like this one and features 3 settings: comfort, normal and dynamic, which allow this Honda to remain comfortable during motorway cruising, yet become firm and agile when high performance handling is required. Even without ADS fitted, the car remains a responsive backroad companion, should you wish to pretend that you're in the British Touring Car Championship race spec version. That's thanks to the way that stiffer suspension up front and a quicker steering rack together deliver a pleasantly pointy, responsive feel. Yet it's a supple setup too that doesn't crash you over small surface imperfections, instead gliding across them with just a distant thud and at higher speeds soaking up expansion joints and cat's eyes with the sort of polish you'd expect of a much bigger car. There's an uncomfortable truth that most of us recognise when it comes to estate cars, namely that the better looking they are, the worse they turn out to be as load carriers. Boxy and dull always wins when it comes to the cubic litres of carrying capacity. It's an immutable law, or at least it used to be. What then are we to make of this Civic Tourer, a car that Honda claims has one of the largest load capacities in its class, yet at the same time is an elegant, swoopy-looking compact estate that most would see as the most stylish choice in its segment? Let's cover off the aesthetics first. Up front, there's the same short rising bonnet you get on the hatch version, with large wheel arches and a distinctive beaky nose sitting above beautifully detailed lower air intakes. The side view, though, is perhaps this car's best angle, with a bold line that runs continuously from the windscreen pillar to the rear lights, creating the impression of a floating roof profile that flows elegantly into the tailgate. Nice detailing includes the same hidden rear door handles that you'll find on the hatch model, and large rear light clusters that wrap around the hatch and are joined by a red bar. All 235mm of this car's extra length has been added at the back here, but even with this addition, this car still remains shorter than most of its contemporaries, which leaves us with the perplexing question of how it can be so spacious inside. How exactly can a little Honda Civic that measures in around 30 centimetres shorter than, say, a huge executive segment Volvo V70 estate nevertheless offer a seats-up luggage bay around 10% bigger? The answer's found in magic, or magic seats to be more specific. Let me explain. Most estate cars would offer their owners a lot more space if more could be done with the sighting and flexibility of their back seats. Now, that usually isn't possible because these are normally situated right on top of the fuel tank. Here, though, it's different. The fuel tank has been moved frontwards, and as a result, the floor level can be dropped and the rear chairs freed up for all kinds of cleverness, hence the magic seat tag. One that's justified by the way that they flip up, cinema style, so that you can carry tall objects of the kind that you might need to accommodate on your return trip from IKEA, or maybe your local garden centre. Further benefits of this design philosophy can be found in the estate compartment, or more accurately, below it. Instead of the usual inconsequential space below floor level that most station wagons offer as a kind of afterthought, this one delivers enough room below stairs to swallow 117 litres. Now, that's enough to take a couple of airline carry-on cases. There's also a really useful compartment into which you can put the tonneau cover when it's not in use, or even an umbrella when it is. Add the underfloor space to the room available above, and you'll find yourself with 147 litres more than you get in a normal Civic hatch, 624 litres in total up to window level. Now, in this class, only Peugeot's 308 SW offers more. I'm reliably informed by Honda that this would be enough for 4 golf bags, 3 large suitcases, 25 pumpkins, or 2,873 tennis balls. To put that into perspective, we're talking around 40% more room than you'd get in a longer Ford Focus estate, and even a much boxier Volkswagen Golf estate has a luggage bay 10% smaller. Supposedly bigger estates from far more exalted market segments are smaller too, if you leave their rear seats in place. Earlier I mentioned that gold standard of boxer utility, Volvo's V70, which has only 575 litres to offer, marginally ahead of theoretical load luggers like BMW's 5 Series Touring, 506 litres, and Ford's Mondeo Estate, 537 litres. So you're getting the idea. There's an awful lot of space to play with here for a car measuring in at just 4.5 metres in length. There are a few caveats, of course. Though 4 floor-mounted lashing eyes are included to tie down awkward loads, and you get carpet designed to repel pet hairs, a netted side storage compartment and a 12-volt power socket, There are no bag hooks available, and much of the space freed up below the floor will be lost if you decide to pay extra for a spare wheel. Nor do you get the cargo bay sidewall mounted latches that many rivals provide to make it easier to fold down the rear bench, a process that in this case frees up 1,668 litres. Now, that's not quite such an eye-catching total when viewed in comparison to some of the bigger station wagons that I've just mentioned. Nor is there the option of the kind of fold-forward front passenger seat that other rivals provide for the transport of really long items. Having said all that, we're still talking of near class-leading capacity here, easily sufficient for, say, 2 full-size mountain bikes. Now, getting things like this in, it'll help that the loading lip is the lowest in the class, a huge 137 millimetres lower than that of the Civic hatchback, and that the seat's folded floor is totally flat. But enough on the cargo bay. Has space for rear seat folk been constricted to pay for it? Not especially. True, smaller kids might not enjoy that stylish raised window line, and this central seating position is definitely the short straw. On the plus side though, knee room isn't bad by class standards. One 6-footer can sit behind another with few issues. And adults familiar with the constricted headroom that you get in the back of a Civic hatch will certainly appreciate the extra inches that the raised roofline of this Tourer model provides. Time to take a seat up front, a position that'll deliver a surprise or two if you're not familiar with Civic culture. There isn't a cockpit I can think of this side of a motor show concept car that looks more willfully futuristic with its dual plane architecture and a mixture of analogue and digital instrumentation. In principle, it sounds like a mixed up mess. In practice, it all works brilliantly. To your left, on the centre of the dash, just above the perfectly positioned gear stick, lies what Honda pretentiously calls the information zone, which is an area in which you'll find not only the air conditioning controls, but above them this 5-inch Panasonic MID TFT screen displaying sat-nav, aircon and stereo system information. You can even personalise its homepage with your own pictures. Directly ahead of you are 3 deeply recessed sporty dials with metallic surround trims. And above them lies the driver interface zone, an upper display that arcs over the main instrument binnacle and is viewed above the steering wheel rim, gathering essential information like speed at the natural point of eye focus. Complementing this layout, the driving position itself could hardly be better, aided by rake and reach adjustment for the wonderfully tactile and now slightly larger leather trimmed steering wheel and a beautifully supportive driver's seat. I'd also point out that over the shoulder visibility is vastly better than it is in a hatchback Civic model. On a less practical note, the Civic's signature drilled metal pedals deserve a mention too, first for being over the top and second for being in exactly the right place. Yes, you can nitpick, and plenty of motoring writers do. It's annoying that the button for the active rear suspension is obscured by the gear lever at times. And it's certainly true that the choice of trim and materials, though now improved with nice white stitching details, still doesn't have the hewn from granite feel you get in Volkswagen Group products. But the British factory in Swindon has certainly screwed it together all very well, and customer satisfaction surveys without number all suggest the cabin quality to be durable. There's plenty of practicality too. Reasonably sized door bins, a spacious glove box, a holder for your sunglasses and a storage box between the seats, and in that same storage box room for a couple of 1-litre bottles plus a further couple of 350 millilitre bottles. Expect to pay somewhere in the £20,000 to £28,000 bracket for your Civic Tourer, so you're looking at a premium of around £1,000 over the standard Civic hatchback. These are the kind of figures that see this car pitched ambitiously towards the top end of the compact estate segment. So if you're looking at one, you'll need to buy into that right from the outset. There's a premium of around £1,000 to go from the 1.8 litre iVTEC petrol model to this 1.6 litre iDTEC diesel, which I'd strongly advise you to find. If you want the 5-speed automatic gearbox, you'll have to have petrol power and find a premium of around £1,500. As to how that stacks up as a value proposition, if, like Honda, you see this car's main competitor as Volkswagen's Golf Estate, you might think a Civic Tourer makes a lot of sense. Pricing is very similar. The Civic's more stylish and spacious, and in diesel form it offers a fraction more performance. Beyond the Golf, Honda also hopes this car will be considered in comparison to similarly priced Qashqai class crossovers, as well as premium badged compact estates of this kind, like BMW's 2 Series Active Tourer and Mercedes B-Class. Price match against those two with direct model-for-model comparisons, and you'll find the Civic Tourer offers a saving of around £2,000. The issue, though, comes when you start comparing this car against small estates from more mainstream makers. Arguably, two of the best options come from lesser Volkswagen Group brands in the form of Seat's Leon ST and Skoda's Octavia estate. Both of these share the same engines, and you'll need the super frugal 1.6 litre TDI 110 unit to directly match the performance and economy combination of the Civic diesel, or the 1.4 TSI 140 petrol unit to match the verve of this Civic 1.8 litre iVTEC power plant. In both cases, the gap in price to this Honda is around £1,000, a figure that gets you a little more space, smarter looks and sharper handling. I can see a small but significant band of buyers being tempted by that. A tougher rival perhaps is Peugeot's 308 SW, which model for model can be anything between £1,500 and £3,000 less than this Civic, and is a match for this Honda in terms of practicality, efficiency and performance. But it isn't as stylish. And how much of that price saving will you lose in inevitably lower residuals when the time comes to sell? These are questions you'll need to ponder. If, having considered all of that, you're still inclined towards this Civic Tourer, then you might find it a little easier to dismiss the other alternatives on offer in the compact estate segment. Toyota's Auris Touring Sports is slightly cheaper, but doesn't offer a credible diesel option, and in petrol form has less performance. And there are no directly comparable petrol alternative variants of any kind if you opt to ditch any preference for badge equity in this segment and take your pick from Ford's Focus estate, Vauxhall's Astra Sports Tourer, Hyundai's i30 Tourer and the Kia Ceed Sportswagen. A 1.6 litre diesel version of any of these will save you £2,000 to £3,000 over this Civic, but will deliver a smaller cargo bay and give you less performance. Despite that, only the Astra can hope to match this Honda's low running costs. If, having weighed up all the options, you conclude that it is a Civic of this kind that you really want, then you're going to be hoping that this car's price positioning towards the top of its segment will deliver you plenty in terms of standard equipment. Sure enough, across the range, you'll find features like 16-inch alloy wheels, roof rails, a DAB digital radio with 8 speakers, Bluetooth and clever flip-up magic seats, as well as more expected items like daytime running lights, power heated mirrors, a USB input and auxiliary jack, and headlights that stay on to see you to your front door. The real niceties, of course, are reserved for plusher variants: front fog lights, auto headlamps and wipers, front and rear parking sensors, a parking camera, and the clever adaptive damping system you'll really want to realise the full dynamic repertoire of this Tourer model. Options? Well, I'd be tempted to find another £600 for satellite navigation, and the roof-mounted cycle carrier, the dog guard and the 430-litre ski box might also make it into my garage. You can also specify wheels of up to 18-inch diameter on this model if you really want, but it'll cost you well over £1,600 for the privilege of diminishing your car's ride quality. As for safety, a 5-star Euro NCAP showing is justified by the usual twin front, side and curtain airbags, though no knee bag is included. Plus, you get all kinds of electronic acronyms to hopefully ensure that you'll never have to use them. There's vehicle stability assist, as well as ABS with emergency braking assist to aid in panic stops, advertised to following motorists by automatically activating brake and hazard warning lights. Beyond that, there's the option of a couple of extra cost safety packs that employ a modern radar-based camera system. The first, a driver assistance safety pack, costing around £800, includes blind spot monitoring to stop you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another car, lane departure warning to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway, traffic sign recognition that pictures road signs as you pass them for display on the dash, and high beam support that'll automatically dip your lights for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. There's also a city brake active system that at speeds of under 18 miles an hour scans the road ahead for potential collision hazards. If one is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the car will automatically brake itself to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. If you want to go even further than that, have chosen the plushest trim level and don't mind shelling out an extra £2,500, a more advanced pack includes all of these features, adds radar-guided cruise control and replaces city braking with a more advanced collision mitigation braking system that also works at higher speeds. Independence of thought is one of the things I've always admired about Honda. Take eco-friendliness. Just as this Civic Tourer was being launched and just as many of its rivals were introducing hybrid models, this Japanese brand ditched its most iconic hybrid design, the Insight. Fashionable greenness? Who needs it? There isn't even a frugally focused version of this car available, the kind of tweaked, eco-minded diesel variant that most competitors offer. Not that this model lineup really needs that. The 1.6-litre iD-Tech 120 PS diesel variant that I'm trying here does, after all, deliver 74.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle, enough to facilitate an impressive potential 817-mile range from a single tank of fuel. That's enough to get this car from its Swindon factory birthplace to Munich in southern Germany without stopping. The iD-Tech unit's strong on cleanliness too, putting out a 99 grams per kilometre of CO2 figure that's really not bad for a car of this size and weight, and looks even more impressive when you start to stack this model up against its competition. A comparably priced 105 PS Volkswagen Golf 1.6 TDI that takes over a second longer to get to 62 miles an hour will take you 2 miles less on every tank of fuel and can't dip under the 100 gram per kilometre of CO2 barrier, so unlike this Honda, will require you to pay for your annual road tax disc. In other words, against the Golf, this Civic offers more space, more equipment, more power and better efficiency. At least it does in diesel form. Start to look at petrol power and the picture's not quite so rosy. Choose the 1.8-litre iV-Tech petrol engine and you'll see your combined cycle fuel economy slashed to 45.6 miles to the gallon, and your CO2 emissions rise by around 50% to 146 grams per kilometre, or 43.6 miles to the gallon and 153 grams per kilometre if you go for the automatic gearbox exclusive to the petrol version. That's quite a hike. These figures have been assisted on all manual models by the standard fitment of a stop and start system. Honda calls it idle stop, to cut the engine when you don't need it, sitting in heavy traffic or stopped at crossings and traffic lights, for example. There's also the usual gear shift indicator light on the dash and, less predictably, vents in the lower front grille of diesel models that open or close as necessary to optimise airflow. Going further than that requires driver cooperation, which the Japanese brand is seeking with two further standard systems borrowed from its planet-friendly hybrid models. First, there's Eco Assist, which uses the car's speedometer illumination colour to advise users on how their driving style is affecting fuel economy. The lighting is green when the car is being driven efficiently, white and green if you start to push on a bit, and blue during heavy acceleration or deceleration. That's an automatic feature, but Honda's other contribution to enviro-conscious motoring is something you actually have to select, this Econ system. Now, pushing this green button on the dash activates a gentler throttle map and tweaks the air conditioning for greater efficiency. But wouldn't you want that all the time, with perhaps a power button for pushing on? It all amounts to the same thing, I suppose, and at least you feel green-fingered the way that Honda has configured it. The warranty is a 3-year, 90,000-mile deal, which is a bit better than most of its rivals, who tend to offer 60,000-mile guarantees. There's also a fixed-price, comprehensive aftercare package called 5, which includes 5 years servicing, 5 years warranty, and 5 years roadside assist. This gets incorporated into the monthly cost of a new Civic on some PCP packages, or it can be added to the purchase price of a new model for a one-off payment of just £500. In a world where roadside assistance as a package might cost you, well, alone over £100 a year, that seems like a wise investment. Residual values of the 8th generation Civic hatch have held up extremely well, so there's no reason to think that those of this Tourer variant will be any different. Though you still can't expect them to be as good as those of the class-leading Golf, they'll be comfortably better than mainstream models like estate versions of the Ford Focus or Vauxhall Astra can manage. Insurance groupings range between 15 to 17 for the 1.8 litre petrol variants and from 15 to 16 for the 1.6 litre diesels. You need a very good reason to buy a small estate car these days, given that for the same money, the market can offer either trendier or more practical means of family transport, sometimes both. Fortunately, this Civic Tourer offers several quite compelling draws on your attention. First, many will find the looks stylish and different, and a welcome relief perhaps from the current fashion for rugged SUV-ness. Then there's practicality. It's not only that this car offers enough carriage space to make many other small estates seem pointless, it's also the way you can use it, with wide openings, flip-up seats and properly large underfloor storage. The 1.6 litre ID Tech diesel engine is another plus. Other brands offer you 1.6 litre diesels that are frugal but feeble, or 2 litre diesels that are pokey but pricey to buy and run. This Honda's engine offers the perfect blend of both, and marries that to a driving experience more interesting and rewarding than almost anything else in this segment. Of course, none of that is to suggest this car to be perfect. The 1.8 litre petrol option is a weaker link. Not everyone will get on with the futuristic dashboard layout, and there are certainly cheaper choices in this segment. Ultimately, though, what's important about this car is the way it shows how Honda has changed. This is now a brand able to continually develop cars people might really want to buy, as well as models they might simply find technically intriguing. A brand at the cutting edge of diesel development, and a brand able to understand the wants and needs of people beyond its home shores. With this car, this Civic Tourer, it's finally clear that in all these areas, at long last, Honda has got the message. And the result in this case may very well be the market's very first genuinely appealing compact estate car. Go on, tell me I'm wrong.